Welcome back to the Making the Brand podcast. Hopefully, you're feeling the excitement in this episode because we're coming off football season, the Super Bowl is coming up, and today we get to hear from two powerhouse women working in sports. We're chatting with Cassie Epstein, who handles business development and external affairs at Gillette Stadium and all of their social media. And then, according to Patriots.com, we're also chatting with arguably the busiest Patriots employee on game
Mm,
day, Abby Thistle.
thank
Welcome,
you.
ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
It really means a lot to me. I know how busy you are. It's not game day, but we're gonna make time for it. So thank you both so much for being here.
Of
Of
course, thanks for
course.
having us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Cassie, let's start with you because I checked out your LinkedIn and I noticed that you've been with Gillette for 16 years.
Yes.
Congratulations. That is a
Thank
major
you.
accomplishment. And
Thanks.
my favorite part that I noticed about your background was that you interned for the New England Patriots when you were a student at Boston College, which I think is really inspiring to go from an intern and then kind of climb your way through to the position you're in now and to be in that position for 16 years. So,
Mhm.
can you share more about your background and how you turned that internship into a 16-year career with Gillette Stadium?
Yeah, sure. I don't think when I got that internship, I thought that I would be here 16 years later. That was like it was never something I thought about. But yeah, I was actually studying theology and psychology at BC. So like this was not also like really the trajectory I thought it was going to go down. But a friend of mine had interned here, and when I heard about what she had been doing, it just sounded so interesting and something that I'd never even. And so I was able to like through her kind of start working game days and volunteer in different roles, and then got that internship, and so it was in Patriots marketing department. So did a whole bunch of like event day things, marketing pieces, grassroots, a lot of stuff for the Revs, our soccer team as well. And then after that internship, still wanted to work here, thought it was super interesting. And my boss at the time, thankfully, he was in my best interest. He was like, you should try and intern in a different department so you get a better understanding of another facet of this organization. There's so much that we do here. And I pushed back. I was like, no, I want to stay in marketing. And he was like, no, it's going to be in your best interest to see something else.
Yeah.
And so I ended up then interning over the summer in the department that I'm in now. They had never had an intern before. So I was their first intern. So we were all kind of figuring it out together. And that was over the summer that ended up, our department really handles all of the external events, like concerts and different pieces that come in outside of football and soccer. So it was a full summer of live music and outdoor events. And it was something that, I mean, music is also another love of mine. So it was like combining these two things that I was really passionate about, which worked out really well. And then went back to school for my senior year, kept working on game days and staying in touch with everyone here, and was lucky enough to get a job like the day after I graduated. Like didn't have a summer, didn't have any time off. We had the NCAA lacrosse tournament like that weekend that I graduated. So I was here working for that. And then yeah, just over the years expanding my role and our department changing in the way that business changes, and that social media wasn't really a thing when I started here. And then started that piece of it thinking that it would be kind of just like a little supplemental way to market our concerts. And then it ended up obviously becoming this really massive thing, and a bigger part of my role than I ever thought that it would. So yeah, so it's 16 years and a lot of different events and a lot of
Yeah.
different craziness, but we're still here in one piece, which is great. It's awesome.
Sounds like every day has been different and,
Yes.
the events and all those exciting things. I'm sure you have some really great stories and memories, and I'm always curious about, the intern to career trajectory. I
Mm.
teach online. I work with students at the University of Florida, and I'm a big believer in trying to make things happen for yourself
Mhm.
and doing those internships and being a sponge, being curious, all of those things. So, thank you
Yes,
for that.
absolutely.
And Abby, also impressive, you have been with the New England Patriots for almost 11 years,
Yes.
and you've worked in sports for various teams and clubs and different sports, not just football, throughout most of your career. So, can you share more about your background and your own progression into the role you're in now?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting that you were just saying the whole like internship and how important you think it is because so I was a history and an English major in college, and I really just did it because I was like, I need to get good grades and graduate. Like that was my goal. Like
Yeah.
nothing else mattered. And so I then it was like end of my senior year that I was like, what am I gonna do? Like I have no like concept of, oh, I want to be a this, right? I was just like, so I just ended up working in Boston for a staffing agency while trying to kind of figure out what I wanted. And I realized I didn't want a sit at your desk 24, 7 kind of thing. I really wanted to be up and about and moving. And I loved sports. I grew up loving sports. I played sports. My dad was a huge sports fan. And so I was always going to games with him. And so I'm like, well, the only way to work in sports is to get an internship of some kind. And the only way to get an internship is to be in school. So I was like, I guess it's a very expensive way of doing it. But I went back to get my master's degree at the University of Denver. And for whatever reason, the way they set up the program, and it doesn't exist anymore. So this might be why when you finished the entire list of everything you had to do, you were still 1 credit short. So like,
Huh.
as opposed to just adjusting that one class that was only 3 credits to 4 credits, they were like, figure it out. So most of us did internships, things like that. And I got an interview set up with my advisor with the Denver Broncos. And I went into it thinking that it was a communications internship. So I was thinking like kind of more PR and marketing kind of thing. And I get in there and we're chatting and he's talking about a bunch of stuff I just like really didn't know what he was talking about, but I'm kind of going along with it. And he's like, all right, so now we're going to go down to the control room and I'll kind of show you the stuff we have. And I was literally like, I don't know what a control room is. And he brings me down the hall and he's like, yeah, this is our replay machine. You've probably worked with this before. And I'm like, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like, meanwhile, I'm thinking, what does this control? Like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Giving you all
And
the power to control
yeah,
everything.
I before this moment, I had never thought about how a game was put on, right? I was only watching the sport itself. And also I would say this was back in 2003, right? Like this was probably just on the cusp of when game entertainment was really starting to pick up. I mean, people didn't have all the LED signage and the video boards and the things they do now. And so I guess in fairness to me, there wasn't as much to notice going to a game,
Maybe the
but
scoreboard, but
right. Yeah. But I guess I faked it till I made it because they hired me to be their intern. And
yeah.
so that is how I ended up working in sports. And we worked with them for a while. I ended up working for the Rockies and the Rapids, which is the MLS team there. They also had lacrosse there at the time. So I kind of did all the sports while I was in Denver and then just wanted to get back home. I'm from the East Coast, grew up here and wanted to get back to my family. So that's why I moved back. And I
Gotcha.
worked in minor league sports and then for the Red Sox before coming here. But if it weren't for that random internship,
Yeah.
I never would have been doing what I'm doing.
That's great, stepping stones, and I bet you never thought that you'd be conducting an orchestra as you describe it.
Oh my gosh, that is the most embarrassing. So can I please
No,
just like
I
make this very
love it.
clear? She said to me, it must be like conducting an orchestra. She's good. She knows how to walk you right into the answer. But
Yeah,
then they show me just saying, yeah, it's like conducting an orchestra. And I'm like, oh my God, people must think that I think that I like am,
you're a maestro,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a compliment, but for those listening, yes, Abby was featured on the Today Show to talk about her role, especially on game day, and you went to speak about this new toy you guys got over the summer, and that's a 22,000 square foot curved
Yes.
radius high definition video board, and it's the largest screen in any sports venue in the country. So yeah, kind of operating that and
Mhm.
all of those happenings on game day, they walked you right into that
They
analogy.
sure
It's like,
did. They sure did. That she knows what she is wonderful. She was such a joy to talk to and made it so easy. I am not used to doing anything like that. So she made it very easy for me. But yeah, I said that line and when I watched it back, I was like, oh God. Like I see how
"Aw,
celebrities get tripped up all the time. Like,
yes,
it's the
yes."
worst celebrity.
This is a little less nerve-wracking, this show, so you're in
Yes.
good hands here.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is back in 2003. You were
Mm,
still in the control room, but maybe there weren't as many things to control.
no.
So, fast forward to today, can you walk us through some of those things that you're handling on game day and what that's like?
Yeah, so I mean, on a game day for Patriots, I'll just specifically speak to Patriots. Obviously, we do manage a lot of events here, and one of the other things that we do is the Revolution soccer games, and so we have 17 of those a season. But from a production standpoint, I'll speak specifically to the Patriots games. We have roughly like 60 to 70 game day employees that round out sort of the team that helps execute a game here at the stadium from a production standpoint. So obviously there's tons of other people doing myriad of other things, but from a production standpoint, we have about 60 to 70 people, and that's camera operators and replay operators. And I mean, it's so interesting because I think like we have somebody who specifically does AI stuff during the game. Like
Uh-huh.
like in 2003, like that wasn't even a thing, so like those are the kind of things that you're like, where has it's just so interesting to me the difference between like our biggest thing with the Broncos I remember was we had this video set to the song Renegade, and we would turn off all the LED boards, and that was like our big moment. And then the video would play, and now I'm transforming people to look like they're sitting on the beach using AI. And like it's just a vast, but yeah, so I have somebody who's specifically in charge of that. I have someone who's specifically in charge of curating social media content to put up on the video boards, which again, back in 2003, social media wasn't a thing, right? Like you just didn't
Yeah.
have that type of stuff. And so now we're putting tweets up and TikTok videos and Instagram posts. And it's been very fascinating to see all of this evolve. And obviously having the largest video board now, I guess probably SoFi would beg to differ. They do have a 360 board, but it's just not as good.
Yeah.
So,
So between the two of you, I mean, there's a lot of innovations and a lot of things to keep up with. I mean, on social, there's so much to work
mm,
with, and it's really great that Gillette recognizes the importance of keeping up with the times, and that you renovated and have this new video board to play with, because then you can do all those cross promotions with social and some of those things that you mentioned. So I'm curious how you two work together on game day. I know you've got 60 plus people on the team on game day, but how do you two specifically work together?
I mean, we work together, I mean, throughout the year, right? Like we have
mhm,
a bunch of soccer and football home games, but there's also a ton of events that are going on that aren't under those. And then we're also doing a ton of different promotions and just different things that utilize the tools that we have in this venue to accomplish those different goals. Like we have, I mean, I don't know why it's really changed in this way, but a lot of our concerts now, when tours go to announce them and promote the upcoming year, they
yeah,
like to do a lot of like videos or teasers or do something with the building, which is it's really
Yeah.
interesting, and it's a new way to announce it, but it's we've seen more and more of that in the most recent seasons. And so this last year I think we did three separate ones, and so some of those are like, we announced Pink was going on tour and was coming to Gillette Stadium, so we lit the whole stadium up in pink and had like a drone going through. And so I'm always coming to Abby and we're like, oh, can we do this on this day? And they're like, I don't know if we have time, or how can we do this? So it's that collaborative figuring out like, when can you time something out? What do we have from a capability standpoint of, we have an idea of like, oh my God, it'd be really cool if this could happen. And then, but we're coming from a standpoint of like, I don't know what the actual capabilities are. So like, here's
Yeah.
what we're thinking. And then having
yeah,
that discussion of what can we do? Like what actually makes sense? Like you guys are dreaming when you're thinking of this thing. Like what can we
Yeah.
really
right. She comes
operationalize?
to me and then I'm like, Cassie, let's bring it down 10 notches.
Right. Let's think realistically about this.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Um,
I'm laughing because we have our new lighthouse that has, that can light up and change colors and everything. And they came to us and said, we need to light up this specific color pink. They gave us like the color of it and whatever, the RGB, and like a couple days later, but they didn't tell us the artist. So a couple
Oh,
days later, I was like, so like who who was the artist that we needed to do this pink for? And they were like, pink.
yeah.
I was like,
Very on brand.
okay. Should have been my first
right.
should have been my first.
But you never know. We've always got different colors
Yeah.
for different people. Like you wouldn't expect the most obvious.
Could have
Yeah.
been Nicki
And then
Minaj or
I know,
something.
but I like of all the people, I should be like, oh, is pink coming? And instead I'm like,
Yeah.
whoever could it be? Like,
right.
He was married to that color. That is so
Right.
funny.
yeah,
But
I
like
Well,
know,
Abby said before, on
Mhm.
game day, like I do Gillette Stadium social media, but there's a whole team that does Patriots and Revolution social. So there's a lot of work that they do with Abby together. I mean, like we collaborate with every team, like we're all working constantly with everyone else in this building. But for like Patriot and Revs game days, they're more directly working with event presentation than I do, just because I'm more of building and external events versus the actual team. So it's kind of this weird little web of different departments working with different people at every different
Yeah.
time and trying to like synchronize everything together.
But lots
Well,
of
we do
people with
work
big
together
ideas.
a lot. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna
No.
say lots of people with big ideas though across
Mhm.
departments. So go
Yes.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we do work a lot with the concert. So like Cassie's
Mhm.
work with concerts from like a game presentation perspective. A lot of times we have concerts that are like, hey, we'll give you guys a couple tickets. Do you want to give them away
Yep.
in some kind of creative way during the game? And so, especially this year, we did a lot of that with. I'm trying to even think. We did some with the Rolling Stones and
Zach Bryan, I
Zach
think.
Bryan,
Yeah.
yeah, so we definitely not just specific to Cassie's social media role, but just her work on the concert side
Mhm.
as well, so
Yeah.
And we have artists that come to games, like we had Kenny Chesney
yeah,
ringing the bell. So we get
Oh,
a lot of things cross over at any given
yeah,
day.
yep,
yeah.
John Bon
I
Jovi,
Mhm.
so
I
Yeah.
feel like it's like home for Kenny Chesney though, and I'm not even
yeah,
from Boston, but I just like I know that for some reason that Gillette is his spot. So
there you
Yeah,
go,
there's
Cat, you
it's
did your job, Cassie,
yeah,
if that's what people think of him, then you have done
yeah,
your
exactly.
job, girlfriend.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it is so funny. I mean, I think people get it these days that New England is a big hub of country music, but when I started here, it was still like
Mm,
these tours couldn't believe that New England had country fans, that it was going to do well here and artists were going to
yeah,
perform well with ticket numbers, and now it's obviously we get a ton of country shows from not just our building but other buildings in New England, but yeah, I mean, Kenny's been performing here since 2006, I think, and so he's done over 20 shows. I mean, it's the stats that he has here is incredible, and so anytime he comes back to the building, it really is that kind of homecoming, which is really fun.
yeah.
yeah. Boston just has a lot of pride, whether it's sports or music or anything.
Mhm.
My husband is from Roslindale, if you're familiar with
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Roslindale, yeah, so I see it firsthand all the time. I see how passionate of a sports fan he is as well. So, I'm curious, can you speak to the culture at Gillette and describe just the feeling inside the stadium? I mean, you have these ideas, "Let's turn the whole thing pink for for this event or
Mhm.
do that," like,
Mhm.
to actually have that come to life and to take it from your offices to this giant stadium and then to add fans and players or artists and musicians into it, it's gotta be electric.
Yeah, I think for us, like, I'm from a department of like concerts that we don't always have, right? Like, it's not like a Patriots season where it's not the same thing every year, but you know the games that you're getting. There's enough pieces that are pretty similar year after year. Concerts, we come in and we're like throwing stuff to other departments. Like, this is an artist we've never had. These are these
Yeah,
different hurdles that we have. It's always different. And so for us, it's really helpful when we have these different departments who are so open and willing to find creative solutions and not just think within, what they've done in the past, that we're always kind of doing new things and trying to be flexible in what we've done in the past and find new ways to maybe think about how we interact with fans or how we're marketing to different people. And so I think, we've got a ton of departments here and teams of people that are willing to work in that way and be flexible and kind of be open-minded and brainstorming new and different things. And, no idea is a bad idea. Like, let's just kind of talk through some things and
yeah,
think differently about it. And so I think for us, kind of coming from that concert side, which tends to be a little bit, different, throwing kind of different things out there to different groups, that can really help us.
yeah.
I think what's interesting about Cassie's job versus mine is like to her point, like I have a very set demographic, right? Like it's Patriots
Mhm.
fans or Revolution fans, right? And that's a demographic that comes to every game. And so you kind of can get to know what they like, what they don't like, the music. And I will say, I mean, it is evolving. And I would say the past few
Mhm,
years I have seen an evolution in our fan base and the age of our fan base and what
mhm,
they're used to want versus kind of what they're looking for now. But with Cassie, with every concert comes a different demographic. And so I think what I found, I think she does a tremendous job with is understanding that demographic and knowing how to speak to them through the Gillette Stadium app, right? And like whether it's I say app, but I mean like whether it's with X or Instagram or anything like that, and knowing what they like with it, the Taylor Swift fans and their friendship bracelets or whatever the case may be, is understanding what speaks to them and then using that to promote the show for Gillette Stadium. So I think that's far and above a harder job for her than it is for me, because once I start to learn it, then I'm like, all right, I got this, right? And every event for her is a different demographic.
Yeah.
But I would also say that it's sometimes difficult because you're like, oh yeah, I know what they want. I know what they want. And all of a sudden something doesn't resonate with them. And you're like, hold up. Why is you're like, wait a minute, you liked this 3,
Right.
games ago, and why? So it's still trying to make sure that you're listening to what they like. But
Yeah. Well, Cassie, I imagine since you do social for the stadium versus the Patriots themselves, maybe you are spared from some of that sports culture a little bit. People angry about the score or, cursing at
Why? They can find
yeah,
January.
they will yell into the ethers no matter where you are.
They'll find an account and they'll tell you how they feel. They find
Yeah.
us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there are a lot of ups and downs in sports, but
Mm.
maybe,
Yeah.
the concerts though, I bet maybe that's a
Mhm.
little bit more
Mhm.
always
Yeah,
focusing on the
it's
positive.
different. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like Abby said, we get a different pool of fans for every concert that we have
Yeah.
here, which can be really fun, but then also really challenging. For Patriot game days, the majority of people that are coming to games for Pats or Revs have been to the building before. And if they're season ticket members, like they know where to park, they know where to enter the building, they know where
Ah,
their favorite food is, they know where their seat is. Like they have really a process down of like, this is my game day, and I kind of know how to move around this building. And it's a massive building, like we work here every day. Like our offices are inside the building. So like for us, it's like our backyard. But for people who come here, I mean, it's a massive property. And so what we focus on a lot too is for fans that a lot of the time have never been here before for concerts. And this is their first time coming here. So not only do we want to provide probably more information than we would necessarily for a game day. Like game day,
yeah.
they don't necessarily need to know exactly how to get to what lot and what gate to enter and where food is located, but for concert fans that have probably never been here, they do need to know all those things. And I think it's to try to put your mind, like I always think too, like when I go to a different venue and if I've never been there before, like really trying to pay attention to like what's overwhelming. Like I don't necessarily know my way around. And so to kind of put yourself in their shoes and realize like, how can I break this information down in a way that by the time they get on property, they feel really confident in where they're going. They know what gate to enter. They know kind of where their seat is. If they have a question, where's guest services? Because a lot of the time, like we have one shot at capturing this fan. And if they come here and they have a really terrible experience, like that might be your only chance to have won them over. And then we've lost it. We've
Yeah.
lost that touch point. There's all these tours, like you can go to other places if you wanted to see the artist somewhere else. And obviously a lot of them you'd have to travel further, but you could in theory go somewhere else. And if you had a terrible experience somewhere, you might avoid it in the future. So a lot of what we've done now is a lot of community listening to hear what fans know, what they don't know, what they have questions about. So asking them kind of like, what do you need us to break down for you? And then turning that around in a really detailed way and then kind of churning that back out. So it's this kind of cyclical thing of hearing from the fans what they need and then for us pushing it out in a way that they're understanding it. So whether that's on the app or on social or on the website, like finding ways to reach those fans to make sure that when they get here, they have a better understanding of how they're going to go across, make their way through this event.
Yeah, because they're there for the entertainment. All those other
Mhm.
pieces, you want that to go smoothly. I
Mhm.
always need
Yeah,
to know the bag policy and can I bring water?
exactly.
Those are
Right.
my
No,
2
it's
questions.
important. It's important. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, pushing all that out there in a way that's easily digestible. And like, I like to do these like little kind of like infographics that someone can like save on their phone and just like have
Yeah.
it in their camera roll to reference really easily. I think can really help because everyone's just on their phones now. So like, how can you
Mhm.
put it together in a way that's easily digestible for people? I think
You
is
send that to the
helpful.
group chat to everyone you're going
Exactly.
with. Yeah.
Right.
"Hey, ladies, your bag has to be, 12 by 6 and no
Yeah.
bigger, or we're gonna have some problems." So
Right.
that's really smart. I'm curious if you've noticed a difference in the feeling in the stadium or just the culture overall since adding the screen.
I definitely have. It completely closed in the north end zone, right? So
Mhm.
before our stadium had this massive gap in it. And so for a long time, and it was a wind tunnel. I mean, it just sucked noise right out of it. And so for a long time, I think there was this like misconception that Gillette Stadium wasn't a loud fan base and that, there's all these other places like Arrowhead and Seattle's stadium where they were breaking sound records and all this stuff. And like, this perception that our fans just weren't that loud. And I kept saying to people like, well, those stadiums are specifically built to hold in noise and they don't have a massive hole in them that's sucking all the audio out. And it is significantly louder in our building since closing in that space. So from a fan just engagement perspective, I think that has impacted the experience a lot. It's made it feel more intimate, which sounds really weird, but when you have sort of just like this whole, venue surrounding you and it's like higher up. And so the venue, it feels almost like an arena in some ways. And it seems so strange because it is an outdoor stadium, but it does have more of an intimate feel. And then it's just brighter. I mean, that
Yeah.
board just emits so much
Yeah.
like light and movement. And so it can be a little sensory overload, but it has made it feel to me like almost like a completely different building
Yeah.
and, in a fun way. So,
Sometimes in the winter, though, you might need it to emit a little heat with it as well.
yeah.
That would be cool. Warm up the stadium a bit as a Floridian.
Well, and it's funny because I think that's weirdly like one of the challenges from a fan perspective as well is that with these domes, you can do the same thing every single game and you can interact with your fans the same way and specifically with phones, right? When it's 60 degrees, you don't mind pulling your phone out and scanning a QR code or tweeting something or, posting a photo. But when it's 20 degrees and snowing, the last thing you want to do is pull out your phone. So in September and October, we're doing all this stuff and people are engaging and we see these high numbers of scan rates and things like that. And then we hit the December months and it's like, and
Wow.
you're trying to now decide, well, how do I engage with people without their phones, right? Because they're not going to pull it out of their pocket or they have mittens and gloves on and they don't want to, so it's almost like 2 seasons of having to engage with the fans in completely different ways. And we noticed that a lot more this year and it was different. We have one activation where people can scan a QR code and it literally turns their phone camera into a live camera on the video board. So we put them
Oh,
up and it's like a selfie cam and they're waving and cheering and it's really, really cool. But we were having like 7,000 scans for that in the first couple games. And we're like, oh, this is a home run. Like this is the best activation. And then we hit December and it was like 1,000. And
yeah,
we're
yeah.
like, huh? What happened? People just don't want to be cold and take their phones out. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And on Cassie's end, that might make, that probably makes social a little bit harder
mhm.
too.
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah.
I know you both are still so creative and working on a bunch of fun ideas and everything, and then it's been going well. So, but I'm curious, you touched on this a little bit, Cassie, the difference between sports fans and concert goers. I'm curious your thoughts on sports fans as an audience segment compared to maybe just a regular customer of a corporate brand or another product or service. What makes the sports audience unique in your opinions?
Think like I mean like the passion, I think. Like I mean, and I think it's also like the New England, like the Bostonian fan base is
Yeah.
so passionate on top of just being like sports fans. Like this is a real sports town. So
Mm.
I think the fans are just really passionate. And I think, you can read that in a positive way or a negative way. And I always try to just view it as a positive. Like people can, say negative stuff, but I'm like, but you want them to care, right? Like when they stop
Yep.
caring, even if it's a negative comment, like you've lost them. Like you don't want ambivalence. So like give me everything you got. Like, I mean, you can get all the comments thrown your way, but I think it's just that passion, that really being tuned in. I mean, we're a building social media account. Like as much as I try to be creative and do fun things and our team puts together great content, like people are opting in to follow a building. And so it's definitely something different than like a team where you're following team stats and scores and players. They can kind of have a personality. Like the building can't really have that same type of personality. And so I think it really does speak to this region that you have fans that are so passionate that they're not only following the team account, they're then following the building that the team plays in. Like it really does speak a lot to the the intensity that fans feel and the ownership and how much they feel a part of it, which is what you want. You want your fans to feel that sense of like, I am a part of this. Like, I'm not playing on the field, but like, I have season tickets. I come to every game. Like, I'm a piece of this. And the fans really are. And obviously, like, the things that Abby does on a game day to kind of generate that crowd noise and that intensity, like, really does translate into meaningful, impactful things within the building. So yeah, I think it's hard because I've only ever worked here outside of college, so I haven't done like social media brand accounts for, like Dyson or like a different product line, but all I can speak to from different people that I know kind of managing different accounts is that passion and that intensity. Like the fans will let you know how they feel. Like you don't
Mm.
have to worry about like guessing how they're feeling about any sort of thing. So they'll tell you. But then it's helpful because it's that good community listening of figuring out what they're looking for, how they feel about something, and then you can kind of cater your strategy around that.
Mm.
Well, good for you for doing such a great job personifying a building, because I follow a lot of brands on social, and I think you and the Empire State Building on social are like the only
They're
ones
the
that really
best.
stick out. So you've done a really great job just again wearing all of those hats and pivoting your brand voice and catering to all of those different audiences.
Thank
Abby,
you.
anything to add to that? Just the sports fan audience in your experience?
No, I mean, she nailed it. It's the intensity with which they care. And, I was having a conversation the other day in a meeting as, we're planning a Hall of Fame ceremony for Tom Brady. And so we were just talking about how the pride that this region has for the fact that he is and he's from New England, right? Like we got Tom Brady, like he's our guy, right? And then it's the same with David Ortiz. He's ours, right? And Larry Bird, like he went to Indiana, he did all that, but he's Boston, right? And so that I think is what I love so much is the like just the pride that they have in where they're from and the teams that they love. We didn't have success for a very long time. I mean, the 86 years the Red Sox didn't have success and the fans still were obsessed with that team, right? And it
Mhm.
was the same with the Patriots, and they were still filling those bleachers at Foxborough Stadium and coming to games, and that's what I think I love the most is just like they love you through the good and the bad. It's a special kind of fan base.
Yeah, and so many sports dynasties out of Boston. It's so funny. My husband was watching the Red Sox in the World Series a few years ago. I want to say it was like 2018, 2019. You might know better.
Mhm.
And it was like the 7th inning and he was asleep on the couch. And I'm like, is this what it's like to grow up and have so many championships that you can just fall asleep when your team's about to win the World Series? Like, I don't know what that is like. Like, it's just like so casual and
I
almost expected
know.
for you. I give him crap for it all the time.
I
He
mean, we
woke
got
up,
very
but
lucky, very, very lucky that we've had such a sustained amount of success with all of the sports teams in this region because it was not like that for a very long time. But I think again, that's what's so cool is that like there was such a long stretch that none of the teams were good, right? I mean, you had the Celtics in the 80s or whatever, but there's not been this level of success with all of the teams for so long. And yet you still have these rabid fan bases that are filling buildings and stadiums. And then we start winning and they're still filling, the buildings. And so it's pretty cool.
yeah, you gotta stick with your team through the ups
Mhm.
and downs. And yes, he did wake up by by the last inning, but I was like, "I can't believe this."
That's hilarious.
So you touched on some of this already, just some of the ways that you engage the fans on the screen, and I'm curious what other ways you convert those attendees into social media followers. I know weather is now a factor that is enlightening and something so interesting to think about, but there's nothing cooler than being featured on the jumbotron. So, what are some of those activations that you both have experimented with?
Oh boy. I mean, I think it's interesting because what I'm kind of working through right now from our fan base's perspective is the original fan base, the blue collar ages like 45 to 60, like,
Mhm.
male that like my dad who what doesn't know what social media is at all, like barely knows how to text, right? And then there's like the new fan that only consumes their information from social media, TikTok, apps, things like that. And so it's like the coming together of those two fans that for me has been very strange, because you have to balance like the old school fan who says in like, we do a lot of surveys and things like that. And so you get the old school fan in these surveys that is saying like, I don't care about any of the other crap. I just want to watch the game. I just like sports. I don't care about anything else. And then you've got the other side that's like, where are my fantasy stats? Where are my out of town scores? I can't see the down and distance. I don't know where this is. Like, and you're like, what? Like,
Wow.
and how do you so I'm like, so you do wanna know when it's third down, or do you not wanna know when it's
Yeah.
third down? Like, and so it's trying to balance the old school fan that doesn't want any of that crap in their face,
Yeah.
and the new fan that's like, "Give me everything that you can tell me about this game, because otherwise I'm gonna sit on my couch
Right.
and find that information on my own." And so I think for me, really learning how to integrate more technology from a statistics perspective, from an other game perspective, outscores, and a lot of next gen stats. So not just how many yards does a guy have, but what was his average speed? I mean, these are things that like, even 2 years ago, you weren't seeing, or heat maps for a quarterback. Like they want to know where on the field the guy is throwing to the most and is making the most connections with a receiver. Like this is bananas to me that like this is even information that we can provide, and it's now, and not only can we provide it, but it's how to provide it and where to provide it and how often to do it without making the other side angry.
Yeah.
So it's been a very interesting dance.
People geek out on the stats. That's
They
that is for
do.
sure. That
They
is for sure.
do.
So, Cassie, I know you touched on this as well, that you cover concerts and other events going on. What a fun job. I think you were there. I know you were there actually for the rainiest rain show that ever rain showed because you're a huge
Yes.
Swiftie.
It was very wet. It was a
I
very
know.
wet day.
Yes, yes. So I'm curious how you would describe the atmosphere at Gillette when it comes to a sporting event versus a concert. What are some of those differences? And also, if you can speak to how the screen may be used differently.
Yeah, well, the screen piece is interesting because, when an artist comes to our building, they're in theory like renting out the building, right? Like for a Patriots game, like we own the structure, we kind of own that game presentation. There's a lot more in control that we can do ourselves. When there's a tour that's coming through, a lot of that is under their control, and they get to decide how different pieces are used. And so Abby and her team will certainly, as we're getting information from the tour of like what they need, help translate that in a real way. But for most of our tours, the screens are off when the artist is performing. So it's all dark. There'll be some potential like advertisements that they'll run as fans are coming in the building or during set changes, what's going up on the board. So those are pieces that will certainly activate, but it's a lot less of that creativity from our end as in Gillette Stadium because it's not really under our control.
Okay.
But the culture is just so interesting. Like I'm such a sports fan and such a music fan, and there's this intensity that you get in these events that they're both like the highest level of intensity but in totally different ways, right? Like you can be like in the stands when like the Patriots are in the playoffs and like scoring a touchdown and you're all high-fiving and it's that like crazy level of excitement. And then I've also been at shows, where you have just like 60,000 people who are all there for one common thing that they all love together. And it's this really positive atmosphere of just kind of unifying under that thing. And so I think the Taylor Swift Eras Tour has just been something unlike anything we've ever seen. And just the positivity around that and having fans come and spend hours and weeks, on costumes and putting together these different like outfits and friendship bracelets and posters and all these different things that, you get these fans that come on site and are just this is the thing that they have been waiting for months, almost years at some point. And so you just want to provide the best experience that you can for them while they're here. But yeah, so it's definitely always something different. For the Taylor Swift group too, it's so interesting because the first time she performed here was 14 years ago. And so those fans, a lot of them were so young. It was a much younger fan base at that point. It was all like 14-year-olds. And now you have a lot of these fans coming back like with their kids. Like they've
Yeah.
grown up with this artist and you've kind of seen throughout the years this evolution of the fandom, which has been really interesting to, I think a lot of people are maybe not now anymore, but before this year would, still think of like a Taylor Swift fan as like a 12-year-old. And it's like, but they're
Mm.
not. Like there certainly are, but these are also, we got a lot of groups of women who came together who were old enough to drink. So like buying cocktails, it wasn't like just groups of like young girls coming together with chaperones. Like the demographic shifts with, the different groups as they're aging, which has been really exciting to see. But yeah, and Abby had mentioned before, it's just with every show that we get here, it's a totally different demo. And so it's always really interesting to see kind of what fans want from an event. Like there are some fans that come with a lot of these, I think like older rockers too, that are like, I just want to know where to park my car and I want to get to my seat and I want to watch the show. And then
Right.
you get a lot of these younger fans who are like, no, like I want to do all different things and I want to engage with social media and like let's find out how to do like all these different activations on site. And so like Abby
Where's
said
the
with the
merch? We
Patriots,
need merch.
right. And like sports fans, like you're looking for different things when you come to an event. And so trying to figure out what that is that fans are really interested in and then kind of keying them into those pieces is always kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, I just from my perspective, it does seem like Taylor Swift has a place in her heart for Gillette, that it's might be one of her favorite places to perform.
We
So
like to think so. We like to
yeah,
think so.
despite the rain, but makes for a good story and a memorable
Yeah.
experience. So
Mhm.
you're providing all of that. There you go. So, speaking of music, Abby, I want to talk to you about how you get the stadium hyped. What are some of your go-to songs? What do the Bostonians love up there?
The Bostonians love a good sing-along. Like if you
Mhm.
can give them those like sing-along songs that they can just scream at the top of their lungs. I mean,
Yes.
my number one go-to is Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi. Like that
Mhm.
I mean, who doesn't love that, right? Like that's
Yeah.
not a unique, like this isn't like, oh my God, wow, that's crazy, Abby. How did you ever come up with that? Like it's, every stadium does it, but I, I like to think that we have a wonderful relationship with Bon Jovi, and I think he finds Gillette Stadium and the Patriots sort of a special place for him. And so those moments where we've got him in the building and the fans are singing along, I mean, that's just like it's beyond, I think, sometimes what a normal stadium would see. So I love those kind of moments. Like we have that weird, the outfield song, Your Love, that nobody can tell you the words to the song, but I think Your Love, whatever the like lyric is, and they just like, yeah, and then they scream the like one word that they know, but they love it. So, and anything like old school rock, like they
Mhm.
just, I don't know, our fans yeah, they love like just like singing along and like screaming and pointing. Like I don't like I like what they do. I don't know. Like I sit up above and like I look down and there's times when we play songs and there's a total difference between playing something like a more of a dance song and fans are like, yeah, like this is cool. And you're showing them on the board and then playing something like Living on a Prayer where you get the yell and the point and
Yes.
like just it's a totally different vibe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I am a massive boy band fan, so if I could
Mm.
add that "I Want It That Way" is always a crowd pleaser. But I also wanna ask if you have ever played New Kids on the Block, because they're from Boston.
Obviously,
Okay, good. Okay,
obviously.
good. Had to
We
make
are
sure.
blockheads. I am a blockhead. I listened to Backstreet Boys on my way to work today.
Love it.
So I would do an all boy band set at a game if I wouldn't get fired.
Let's make it
So
happen.
but no, we had Donnie Wahlberg at a game this season at one point, and we played a New Kids on the Block song, and fans sang along, and he kind of, sang with them, which was awesome. And we've been lucky enough to have Joey McIntyre sing the anthem at a game, and he's obviously a friend of the organization. So yeah, we're very lucky to have those connections. At least I feel very lucky to
Yeah.
have those connections.
So fun. And, listening to the Backstreet Boys the day that we record this podcast is a prerequisite for being on this
Mhm,
show. So
mhm. Yep.
excellent job.
I am a huge boy bander, so I would do a whole podcast just talking about boy bands, so
Well, you'll have to come back. You'll have to
I
come back.
will.
Just a few more questions here. So I'm curious how the both of you and each of your roles track the effectiveness of what you're doing. Like Abby,
Mm.
for you, is Is the decibel level a KPI? Like, is that
Mm.
is that the main thing you look at? Like, what?
You know, yeah, it could be, right? I think, yeah, there's 2 things. So there's the instant reaction that you get, right? Like, that's what I think is so unique about what we do, is that they'll tell you right away whether what you're doing is working or not, right? You play
Yeah.
a song, and if they're not singing along, you're like, okay, we'll try a different one. Or, you try a game or a trivia or whatever, and if it sort of falls flat, you're like, okay, won't do that again. And so there is that instant feedback, which I really love. And it's why I do what I do. I mean, the best part of what I do is hearing the fan reaction, right? Like playing that song and fans singing, and the whole place is like just especially like a night game when the lights, it's just like
Yeah.
there's nothing like that. And so I love that part of my job is to affect that. But we also do a lot of surveys. And so we also have surveys after every game, and the league does a lot of surveying and provides that data to us. And I use that constantly. I mean, I'm always looking for it. Every time it gets sent after a game, I go through, and even just like the quantitative feedback, like the verb, like the things that they're writing, I will read, even though it's like an addendum and they're not like really, I go through and I read it because I really want to know what they're saying, and I want to understand what it is that what's resonating with them, and what's not, and what they like and they don't like, because we've noticed over the last few years that like our our halftime entertainment, so to speak, or lack thereof, is kind of what's been bothering them. And so we've spent the last couple of off seasons really focusing on that. Like, how do we make our half times more interesting, and what can we do that will make the fans, although I'm not sure our food and beverage department would agree, but like would make the fans stay in their seats and want to watch, what we're doing. And so I do really rely on that and want our fans to share that feedback, because my job is to make them, I used to say in minor league hockey, when I worked in minor league hockey, like if they leave the building and they've no idea what the score was, then I did my job. And I'm not sure that will ever happen in Patriots football, but at least if they leave and if we lost and they leave and they're like, I still had the best time, like then I know I did a good job. So
Yeah. I love that. So, Cassie, what about in your role? We talk about affecting reactions. I think there's nothing cooler than having an idea, putting it out in the world, whether it's in the stadium or publishing it on social, and then someone does the thing that you hope they would do, whether they retweet it, reply, or click a link. So,
Yeah.
what are some things that you look for and try to spark on social?
Yeah, and it's always different. Like we have a whole marketing side that can provide those comparative analytics of like how did we do last year in comparison with other NFL venues or other venues in New England or other like similar things like that. So we can always track and see like how are we doing in relation to other similar accounts to ours. And it's always different based on what our goal is. Like if our goal for something is to move ticket sales, like we're tracking those links, we're seeing, conversions like that of figuring out was this a good way to be promoting this information or whatnot. I'm always trying to kind of sneak information with those engaging concepts. Like I want you to engage with it, but also like you're not realizing that you're also disseminating information that I want you to disseminate. So like
Oh,
retweet to enter this thing, but like also I'm going to include a link to our information page so you can find out about our bag policy and our opening times and all those things. So not only are you entering to win something, but you are also feeding this information now to everyone that you're following. And then it kind of grows from there. So there's little things like that, we're always trying to provide value for our followers. I mean, like, why would you follow a stadium, right? Like, you have to figure out like what that answer is, and then that kind of
because
like
the
guides the
person who
strategy.
runs their social is sassy and funny and knows how to
yeah.
talk to
She
you.
thinks she's funny. She finds herself funny at times. So come along for the journey.
Yes.
But like, why would you follow it, right? Like, is it for like behind the scenes content? Is it for information that you wouldn't find anywhere else? Is it because there's ticket giveaways? Like, whatever that answer is, that's how we mold our strategy because we're not a team. Like, we're not kind of that like personality that you would get by running a team social account. So it is run in a different way of being informative, but also like don't be too informative because then fans aren't going to find the entertainment in it. So it's that mix of we want to retain our fans. It's also a very good, very quick understanding of how something's working is if your numbers are dropping and you're losing fans. And it's like, what, that ratio is off. Like we're not providing enough content for our fans that they find valuable. Like you don't want to just be like a PR source because they can find information out elsewhere. Like,
Yeah.
why are you following? Like, what are we providing that you're not getting anywhere else? And so it's it's that constant goal of trying to find content that you would only be able to get from following us. And whether that's backstage information or photos or videos of a stage going up that you wouldn't necessarily see anywhere else, like
Mhm.
finding the ways to draw people in because they wouldn't be able to get that from watching the local news or following the team account or following somewhere else that they could get that information from. Like it's that kind of sweet spot of informational, but also entertainment. So
Yeah.
it's always trying to figure out those different types of metrics of like the followers, where the followers are, the demographics, what they're responding to, what they aren't, how we're doing comparative to other people, and the ticket sales. It's a real mix of all those different things.
Yeah. You just made me reflect on why I think I follow any building or Gillette in
Right?
particular. And I would say it's because I want to be a fly on the wall. I mean, you can't have tickets to everything, most likely,
Yeah.
unless you're a season ticket
Hmm.
holder. But there's sometimes you can't make it to a game or you can't make it to a show or you really wanted to go to that concert, but you couldn't make it happen. So
Yeah.
to help people feel like they can experience it, at least through social, I think can be really magical. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all that come to life. So, lastly, I would love to know what advice you would give to anyone working in
Mm.
sports or marketing or just anyone who may struggle with engagement and looking to solicit a reaction and a response from their audience. What are your biggest learnings or just tips as far as sparking that conversation and participation?
Mm. I think for me, I would say get an internship. Know what you're going into interview for, but get an internship and make yourself indispensable. Always be there, always offer to be there, always help, always, I was like, "Hey, I'll come in and help you set up the lighting for this shoot," or there's an event that needs speakers set up. Like I was always just like I was annoyingly always around for my internship in Denver and learning just every facet of something, right? Like I think minor league sports is also my biggest thing is go work in the minors because you're going to learn ticket sales, you're going to learn marketing. You're going to learn marketing in a very hard way, right? Because it's a lot harder to get people to go to a minor league game than it is to go to a Patriots game or like it's in some ways the NFL and NHL and these, the major sports sell themselves. And I don't mean that in like, oh, it's so easy to do and you don't have to market them, but trying to get somebody to go to a minor league hockey game is way harder. And so you learn a lot in that. And I think that makes you more adaptable in other roles for in other teams. So that is my advice. And then in terms of just from a fan perspective and a demographic perspective, I just as much as it's like as much as you want to be like, oh, this curmudgeon again, like bitching about whatever, or like, only the annoying people go on Twitter and complain about something, like taking that step back and being like, regardless of anything, I got to listen to these people because they're the people who are consuming our product, right? Like they're either coming to games or they're coming to concerts or they're, and so what they want and don't want is important. And so I used to take those surveys and be like, what are they complaining about again? Can't find the replays. Like we replay every play. And I'd get like so annoyed. Right. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm clear. And then now I sort of am like, I'm clearly not doing my job right if they still are complaining about something. So just trying to listen a little bit more, I think for me anyway. That's it.
Which
That's
that
it.
was like, Abby, that was so similar to what my answer was going to be. Because I was saying, like, we are so similar. I would get like so many tweets, like in previous shows, where they'd be like, well, what's the bag policy? What size can I bring? And I'd be like knocking my head against the wall of
Mhm.
like, it's right on the website. Like, it's been up there for months. And then you have to shift that mindset, right? Of like, they're not the ones at fault. Like, if they're not finding it, like, I'm just not putting it in the right place for them.
Yep.
Like, you can't fault the fan. Like, clearly it's just not in a way that they're able to consume it easy enough. So it's like, is
Mhm.
that a social graphic? Is that putting it out on the web, on the app? Is that putting it out in an email? Like, do we put less information and more like graphics, or like just less info in the email so it's easier to click through? Like, you have to find that solution because the fan's not the problem. Like, they want the information, like they're just not seeing it. So like, instead
Yeah.
of, it's that rejiggering of your brain, right? Of not like, gosh, they're so annoying they can't find it. But like when you especially start seeing like a lot of similar comments, it's like, wow, okay, so like we're missing something here. Like, I thought I put it in a place that was going to be really obvious and it's not. So like we got to
Mhm.
kind of refigure out where that's going to go. And I think
Mhm.
from the social side too, like I think any time you're on social, like anyone, like me included, like there's the tiniest bit of like narcissism in it. Like, I want people to hear what I have to say. Like, I'm listening, like I'm giving my feedback. Like, that's what it is, right? Is like this conversation, like you're giving your opinion, you're kind of giving your viewpoint. So I think we're always just trying to like start a very easy conversation. Like, we posted, I think a couple days ago, like 4 months until our concert season starts. Like, what concert are you looking forward to? Like, it's a very easy question, but then people are then really prompted to like share their opinion, share, this is my favorite artist because I've been coming for 10 years and I can't wait. I'm going to come with my husband and this is going to be our anniversary. Like,
Yeah.
it's very easy to spark a conversation with topics that people want to talk about and share their personal experience from. And we're lucky to work in a building that can create those really memorable experiences. So it's much easier to kind of tap into that. It's a much more easily accessible pool of what was your favorite Kenny Chesney show here? Like, share a photo from last concert season, like, or your favorite concert here, like share that. And so I think people on social like do want to share that. Like, they want to be a part of the conversation. They want to provide their viewpoint. And so you can tap into it that way. And then for the advice, kind of the work side, again, similar to Abby, I remember like when I was an intern here, especially coming into here being like a theology and psychology major, and everyone else was like a sport management major. So I was like, I got to work 10 times as hard.
History and English, sister.
Right now.
Like, what?
I'm sure they were all like, what is this girl doing here? And so I was like, I have to work harder anyways. And I just remember
And
being
you're
like,
female, right? So
Yeah,
there's like
right.
a double whammy of you're trying to work
Mhm.
in an industry that's male dominated. You
Yeah.
don't have that background that everybody else
Mhm.
has. So
Yeah. And so it was literally like we would be getting like coffee for someone, but I wanted to be the first person to get up and offer to get the coffee. Like, it didn't matter what the
Even after
task was.
today, Cassie, I don't know.
No, but I was like,
yeah,
I want to be the one
Cassie's
that
no longer allowed to touch coffee.
I can't because I spilled all over myself. If you were here, I just reek of just latte. It's great.
You're fired from coffee.
But it was truly like it didn't matter what the role was. And I think Abby touched on this too, like, especially working in sports, like it's really, I'm always looking for people that don't care what the role is or like how glamorous it is. Like, there's a lot of stuff we do here that's really cool and really glamorous. And boy, oh boy, is there a lot that is like the least glamorous stuff you've ever seen. And if you can find people that treat both of those tasks with the same energy and the same level of commitment, like that, I think is really like the secret sauce. And so I wanted to make sure when I was interning, like, it doesn't matter if I'm folding t-shirts for like a t-shirt cannon. It doesn't matter if I'm getting a coffee or if we have like a player appearance, like whatever it was that they needed, I wanted to be the one that they thought of first because I was going to be early or on time. I was going to be super prompt and professional. I was going to stay late. I was going to always offer to do more. And so I think those were the things, like, I didn't have the background, but I was willing to learn and do the most. And that really translated, I think, more than necessarily having the major. But I think also, especially in today's world with social media, I think another really big thing I'm always telling students to do is just to reach out to people in roles that you're interested in. Like, I was never a good networker. Like, I could never like go into a ballroom and like meet people and like wear a name tag and like, it was just never going to be me. And I think social media is a great equalizer of, you can just reach out to someone and listen, like, not everyone has time for that or is able to get back to you. And that's totally fine. But a lot of people do. And so it's even just a Zoom or an email of, can you tell me a little bit about your role? I'm kind of interested in getting into sports, interested to hear about it. And there's so many things that you can learn from that. You can learn, okay, maybe this isn't the role that I thought it was or that I really want to get into. Or you can spark up a conversation with someone that maybe they don't have a role right now and you don't need to go into it asking for a job. Like, I think it's even better when you don't, because then the person doesn't feel the pressure of like, oh God, I don't have a job to offer you. But you just start a conversation and you start, potentially a connection that when they do have a role, maybe you're someone that they think of in the future and they can start that conversation or kind of figure out a role for you. So it's always kind of proactively finding those connections and just starting a conversation with no lingering, like, I want to get a job. Can I talk to you tomorrow in case you guys have a job? Like, just to ask people about their role or how they got into their role. And you'll find like most people really are open to having those conversations, and it can be a real help in whatever you're trying to do.
People like talking about themselves.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, how do you think you got us on this podcast?
Here we are.
I know, we're over time. We can just
we like to talk about ourselves.
We could go all day.
Themselves. So just ask them to tell you about themselves. They'll tell you.
Well, I so admire both of you, just your grit and how you've gotten to where you are. And I think that is great advice. And thank you so much for sharing it. And I think what is so special about what you both do is that to work in a stadium and to have all of these events and sports and all these things, you're creating real memories for people. Like people
Mhm.
think so fondly of that game or that concert and the people they were with and just the experience that they had. So I think what you're doing at Gillette is really special, and I'll have to experience it at some point.
You
See that
are
screen.
more
Come
than
on
welcome.
down.
Yes, you just let us know.
I will. My mother-in-law still lives in Roslindale, so we're up there
Okay.
occasionally. I would love to take you both out for coffee. And
I
Only
won't
if
spill
we
it on
can.
myself this time.
Yeah.
yeah.
A, Cassie's not allowed to come. And B, only if we talk about boy bands the majority of the
Oh
Mhm,
time.
my
mhm.
gosh. Book my flight. I am
Yep.
ready. I know it's
Please.
January in New or February in New England, but that
Mhm.
will lure me out of the Sunshine State for sure. Thank you both so much. This was so fun and enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for
for
having